Okay, I get it. The Montreal Canadiens are playing later today, so this might not be the hottest topic on the block when it comes to Habs discourse on social media. However, that's not going to deter me from making a video about this very particular thought that I think Kent Hughes should be thinking about as well. Today we're going over on to Elliotte Friedman's recent comments on 32 Thoughts, speaking out about the Columbus Blue Jackets. Yeah, the Blue Jackets have been in a pretty interesting spot because earlier this week they claimed defenseman Dante Fabbro on waivers from the Nashville Predators. Now, we had seen Fabbro as a name that I said the Vancouver Canucks should go out there and target on the waiver wire. He was available, but here's the thing, even if the Canucks did put in a claim for Fabbro, didn't really matter because the Blue Jackets claimed him first. Anyways, with all this in mind, the Blue Jackets needed to get somebody out of their lineup in order to get Fabbro's roster spot available and on the team. This is where we saw the Blue Jackets take David Jiricek out of the lineup, with some comments from Dean Evason saying this: "If you want to play, then you need to earn that right to be on the ice and play games." He also said this, that the coaching staff recently met with Jiricek to watch film together as a learning opportunity for the young defenseman. Aaron Portzline has the full scoop here. The head coach was asked by Mark Shig if 20-year-old David Jiricek, who has played only 5 of 15 games, needs to build trust with the coaching staff. Yeah, I mean, that's our whole process, is earning the opportunity to play more. I don't know what game it was on the road trip, but we sat and watched all of his shifts. It's teach and communicate what we need from every player, but from him in particular. Yeah, we need, if you want to play, then you need to earn that right to be on the ice. So, pretty much the same comments that we had read about from earlier, just expanded upon a little. With this in mind, though, David Jiricek is in a pretty interesting spot because a lot of people, myself included, believe Jiricek to being a top 2 defenseman in the future. He was a top prospect back in the 2022 NHL Draft, was taken 6th overall, 20 years old, right-handed guy, big dude, 6'3", 209, and he was really solid in the AHL the past few years. 38 points in 55 games played in his very first season, which happened the year after he was drafted. And then last year, he was at 19 points in 29 games in the AHL as well, had 11 points in 14 games in the playoffs with the Cleveland Monsters, and also had an extended cup of coffee, half a season's worth of time in the Columbus Blue Jacket system, 10 points in 43 games. Very good production for a guy who was only 19 years old. This season, though, he's only played 5 games, he's got 1 point, and a lot of people have been asking, hey, what's going on with this guy? Is there a situation here? Could he potentially be on the move because the Blue Jackets are not using him? Like, come on, it's Columbus of all teams. David Jiricek is a very talented young piece, so if there was any sort of a trade conversation that could pop up, of course, teams would be interested. Here's what Elliotte Friedman said earlier yesterday about Columbus and David Jiricek. He wants to watch the David Jiricek situation because Jiricek hasn't been playing much and there were rocky waters between the player and the organization last season. Friedman then goes on to say that Don Waddell wouldn't have the same attachment to David Jiricek as Jarmo Kekalainen did. Of course, Friedman is never going to directly say, yep, this guy's on the market, unless he's 100 million% sure that that guy is on the market. It's just not going to happen that way. However, when you think about Jiricek as a potential piece, it would make sense to see him maybe get moved. Dante Fabbro is literally a right-handed D, so that's even more competition to get ice time, and when you consider the lack of an opportunity that's been presented so far, as well as the GM potentially not having much attachment into developing this guy as the previous one, it opens up the door to conversations like this, which was posted about on Twitter by Alex Jodoin. I would target David Jiricek if I was Kent Hughes. He says he wants to be patient and not do anything that would jeopardize the future of this team, but acquiring him could only be helpful. And this was replied to and read a whole bunch of people were responding to this idea on social media. And the interesting thing about it is I'm seeing a lot of replies going out there and saying, hey, if the Canadiens wanted to get David Jiricek, they'd have to give Columbus a right-handed D back, so either a Logan Mailloux or even a David Reinbacher. I don't know about you, but if it were up to me, if I were to swap Reinbacher for Jiricek 1-for-1, I would do that in a heartbeat. Not to discredit David Reinbacher, it's just, I feel like if you wanted to project these guys similarly to the end of their careers, I do think that they would roughly be about the same kind of player. Maybe Jiricek has a little bit more mobility and finesse to his game than Reinbacher does, but also you have to consider injuries, right? David Reinbacher has had a really big season-ending injury to bounce back at after a really bad year last season. David Jiricek has just been going upwards the entire time so far. So even if you think of these guys as projecting similarly into the future, you have to give Jiricek that extra edge because he has not had to deal with some of the crap that Reinbacher has. So if you were to do 1-for-1, I'd actually do it. Like, I'd do it right now. Maybe even add a third-round pick or something from the Reinbacher side to make it all work. And if it's Logan Mailloux instead, I would just totally, definitely do that. 1-for-1. I mean, maybe it's not 1-for-1 from the Columbus POV, but you have to think, maybe because the GM just does not care about this dude as much as Jarmo Kekalainen did, there isn't really that same evaluation there. Maybe. That's just me speculating. However, with all this in mind, I wanted to go out there and talk a little bit about some other teams that could be involved here, because Montreal fans are not the only ones going out there and tweeting about David Jiricek. Take a look at this. It was posted onto the Oilers Nation Twitter account as well. Could David Jiricek be a name that Edmonton keeps tabs on as a potential trade target this season? And the video clip goes out there and talks about it. It's not really as poppin' as the Montreal conversation is in terms of social media engagement, but there are Oilers fans that are going out there and talking about this, saying, hey, this guy is there, he could be available, and the Oilers do need young defensemen. It's kind of funny because when you think about it, okay, yeah, David Jiricek, he's getting scratched, he's not playing these games. How bad would he be if he was on Edmonton? Like, would he be that much worse than a Troy Stecher or a Ty Emberson or a Travis Dermott? I mean, he's a natural righty, so of course that helps. Also, he's only 20 years old. We've seen the Oilers be willing to take chances on these other younger guys from teams that are not really working out all too well. We saw Vasily Podkolzin, we saw Matthew Savoy, we saw now, of course, David Jiricek entering that conversation. He fits that bill, he fits the mold. He would potentially be a huge addition to this team. And I'm thinking about it like, yeah, if David Jiricek becomes the player that he could be, as a member of the Oilers of all teams, then that top four all of a sudden looks very strong. If you have Nurse, Jiricek, Ekholm, Bouchard, and then whomever else you wanted to have on the bottom pair, that defensive core ultimately becomes so much better. But of course, it's only if David Jiricek becomes the player that he can be. Right now, he's not that, but you have to evaluate whether or not that bar is already higher than what you've seen out of other guys. So yeah, Edmonton fans, if there's a defenseman or somebody else, any other assets prospect-wise that you think could make this work, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you're a Blue Jackets fan, what are your thoughts on this? What are your opinions on the idea of trading with either Edmonton or Montreal, sending away a guy like Jiricek? Of course, Friedman is not saying that it's going to happen. He's just saying keep an eye out on it, because it is interesting to note the developments in Jiricek's progression this year, and now with the addition of Dante Fabro, things have gotten even worse for the young Czech defenseman. So, thoughts in the comment section below. Habs fans, Oilers fans, Blue Jackets fans, what are your opinions on David Jiricek as a potential trade option? Could we see one of the best young defensemen in the NHL be on the move in some capacity later on? I always thought that Jiricek had that kind of like Miro Heiskanen ceiling, which was evident by his super high draft stock and profile. I actually did think that he had a chance to being the top defenseman taken in 2022 above Simon Nemec, but he wasn't. So thoughts in the comment section either way. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.